All right, let's get right into it. Choosing someone to work on your roof? Well, it's one of the biggest, most high-stakes decisions you're going to make for your home. You get it right, and you're set for decades. But if you get it wrong, oh boy, the problems are just getting started. So today, we're going to break down exactly how to spot those red flags and hire smart. And trust me, that is not an exaggeration. This quote just hits the nail on the head. We're not talking about a little scuff mark on the wall here. A bad roofing job can trigger a whole cascade of issues that can mess with the entire structure of your house. So that's the million-dollar question, isn't it? Look, it's not about you having to become a roofing expert overnight. Not at all. It's about learning how to spot the warning signs, the little things that separate the real pros from the real problems. And that's exactly what we're going to walk through right now.
Okay, first up, let's talk about the risks involved. Because before we get into the nitty-gritty of red flags, you really need to understand what's on the line here. Knowing the consequences just makes spotting those warnings that much more important.
I mean, just think about it for a second. A bad hire, yeah, it can mean a leaky roof, but that's just where it starts. It can also mean that the warranty on those super expensive 30-year shingles you just paid for, poof, it's worthless because they weren't installed right. And even worse, you could be on the hook for accidents that happen on your property or get blindsided with surprise legal bills. It's serious stuff.
All right, let's move on to first impressions, those early warning signs. You'd be surprised how many of the biggest red flags pop up right at the beginning, in that very first phone call or meeting. This is really your first line of defense. So here you see this huge contrast in approach, right? A shady contractor is going to try to rush you. They'll hit you with stuff like, this price is only good for today, to create this false sense of panic. A real professional, though, they want you to feel good about your choice. Their pricing is going to be consistent, and they'll actually want you to take your time and do the research. This one's a classic, and for good reason. We all love a good deal, I get it. But in the world of home contracting, if a bid seems way too low, that should be setting off alarm bells, not making you feel relieved.
Yeah, that magically low price has to come from somewhere, right? It's not magic. It usually means they're using cheap, shoddy materials that are going to fail in just a couple of years, or they're cutting major corners on the installation itself. Or, and this is a popular one, it's a classic bait and switch, where your final bill suddenly gets a lot bigger with all these unforeseen costs.
You also have to think about stability. A real, legitimate business has roots in the community. They've got a physical office, a place you can actually go to. If a contractor only gives you a P.O. box, or they're just working out of the back of a pickup truck, well, that can be a pretty big sign they might not be around in 6 months to answer for their work.
This one is so simple, but man, is it powerful. If a contractor does good work, they're going to have a list of happy customers just ready to go. If they start hemming and hawing, making excuses, or flat out refuse to give you references, you have to ask yourself, what are they hiding? You should ask for at least 3 recent references, and you have to actually call them.
Okay, next section. Get it in writing. This is so important. Your paper trail is basically your most important shield in this whole process. Talk's cheap, right? But documents offer real protection, and it's what separates the pros from the amateurs. Now this part is completely non-negotiable. First, get their license number, and then go online and check it with your state's licensing board. Make sure they're legit. Then you need proof of 2 kinds of insurance. General liability, that covers damage to your property. But the big one, the one you really need to focus on, is workers' comp. And here's why that's so critical. If a worker gets hurt on your roof and the contractor doesn't have it, you could be the one on the hook for their medical bills. That is a massive financial risk you just can't afford to take. I mean, just look at the difference here. A vague estimate is a giant red flag. What even are standard materials? Who gets to decide that? A professional estimate, on the other hand, is a super detailed document. It's going to list the exact brand and model of the shingles, it'll break down the costs for labor and materials, and it'll give you a clear timeline. Let this one sink in for a second. A verbal agreement is not a contract. Any promise made with a handshake is pretty much legally meaningless. If it's not in writing, as far as the law is concerned, it doesn't exist, period. So, the final contract you sign needs to cover everything. It has to include all of these key things: the exact materials being used, a start and end date, a payment schedule that's tied to their progress, all the warranty details, and even who is responsible for cleanup at the end. Now let's follow the money.
How a contractor asks to get paid can be one of the absolute clearest signs of their financial health and, frankly, their integrity.
Okay, so a legit contractor is going to ask you for a reasonable deposit. This is totally normal, so don't be alarmed by that. The whole point of it is to cover the initial cost of buying your materials and to lock in your project on their schedule. It's actually a sign of a well-run business.
But this? No way. Never. There is almost no good reason why you should pay for an entire roofing job before the work is even close to being done. This is one of the biggest, brightest red flags for potential fraud. If that contractor decides to just disappear, guess what? So does all of your money.
So here's the difference, plain and simple. A professional payment plan is designed to protect you. You pay that reasonable deposit, sure, but then you make progress payments as they hit key milestones, like when the materials show up or when the old roof is torn off. That final big payment, that only happens once the job is 100% complete and you've looked it over and you're happy with it.
So we've covered a lot of potential problems, I know, but let's try to reframe this. Every single red flag we've talked about is actually a piece of information that gives you power. So now, let's put it all together into a simple toolkit you can use.
This right here, this is your checklist for success. Before you even think about signing anything, you have to be able to tick every single one of these boxes. Verify their license and insurance. Demand a detailed written contract. Call their references. Compare multiple bids and not just the price on the bottom line. And never, ever let someone pressure you into making a decision.
And this quote really sums it all up, doesn't it? The time you spend on the front end doing your homework is the single best investment you can make in this whole process. It's what stops those years of problems and expenses we were talking about at the very beginning.
So in the end, it all really boils down to this one simple question. A great contractor, they build a relationship with you based on being professional, transparent, and earning your trust. A problem contractor, they rely on urgency, on being vague, and on pressure. And now, you have the tools to tell the difference.